Hello, my friends, and welcome to an Age of Empires 2 overview of the new civilization, the Georgians, which is soon to be introduced to Age of Empires 2 in the Mountain Royals expansion. Now, yesterday or the day before, I uploaded the Armenians video. In that video, we broke down the unique things that civilization has. There are two things, though, that the Armenians have, that the Georgians also have, so we are going to start there. The Georgians start with what the Armenians would then have to build, and that is a mule cart. A mule cart is an economic unit. You build it like you would build a lumber camp or a mining camp, and it can act as a lumber camp or a mining camp, and you can freely move them from resource to resource. And unlike a mining camp or a lumber camp, the mule cart actually costs 2 resources, so it is 20 food and 100 wood. The good thing about being the Georgians, though, is you start with the mule cart, meaning that right off the bat, you're able to have a drop-off building for wood and a drop-off building for stone and gold. In order to compensate for starting with what is essentially an interchangeable lumber camp and mining camp, you do start with 50 less food than other civilizations, though. And that does make the start kind of tricky. If you ever played with the Chinese, where they start with 0 food but 6 villagers, there's a point where you have to force drop off food to keep villager production rolling from the town center. Starting with the standard 3 villagers but minus 50 food means you do still arrive to a point where it is tough to keep the TC working flawlessly if you're not force dropping off of the TC. Now, having played around with this, I think the best thing you can do with a Georgian start is not go with 6 on food, but 7 or even 8 on food to compensate for the food that you didn't start with. You then, of course, not only don't have to spend wood on a lumber camp, or a mule cart in this case, but you also don't have to spend time building it. So in my testing, 7 or 8 villagers on food at the start for Georgians, and then going right over to a wood line with the mule cart to collect wood is the way to go. Moving on to the next thing, the Georgians also have a fortified church, just like the Armenians. Only they do not get access to the warrior priest, which is the unit that can attack, heal, and pick up relics, but it lacks the ability to convert. So the Georgians are a little bland. Apparently there's no weapon making inside of their church. And apparently they're not as educated either, because if you look at their monk tech tree, they lack atonement, which means they lack the ability to convert other monks. And they also lack illumination, where monks regain their faith 50% faster after conversion. Those two things right there do make this civilization awkward with playing in towards a lot of monks. But the fortified church with this civ has another purpose. Sure, you can still garrison villagers and garrison your monks inside of the fortified church, and that's very nice. But this fortified church actually gives a boost to the work rate of your economy. Villagers in a 10-tile radius of a fortified church have a 10% work rate increase. I think this could be insane. With the Georgians, we will see the fortified church used to boost the eco instead of used to make monks to convert things. Got to keep in mind, the mule cart can move as you collect resources already. So as you chop through a wood line, you can move the mule cart towards the wood so the villagers aren't walking as far. You combine that with the fortified church, you might have a position where you could have one fortified church increasing the work rate and efficiency of mining villagers on a stone or a gold and your lumberjacks at the same time. So this is pretty strong, and I tested it, and I think it allows a unique economic approach, which is going to be fun to see players try and toy around with. Normally, when you're focusing on economy in Age of Empires, you have the 2nd and 3rd town center to add more villagers. There's an argument maybe to not add a 2nd or 3rd town center and instead add these fortified churches to just increase efficiency. I don't know what is best, and as always, it probably depends. So we'll see over time how good the fortified church eco boost really is. The next thing on the list for the Georgians is the units and buildings receive minus 15% damage when fighting from higher elevation. Now, the way it's always worked in Age of Empires is if you're on top of a hill, you're receiving 25% less damage, and you are also doing 25% more damage. This just contributes to units and buildings on hills dominating the fights more than they already do. In addition to controlling the hills, the Georgian cavalry regenerates 5 HP per minute in feudal, 10 HP in castle, and then 15 HP in Imperial Age. So think about it. You can combine this with a couple monks that may be out and about. You've got a decent shot of healing up a knight army before the next wave and being in a better position to attack, especially if you find a hill. Initially, the cavalry generating 5 HP per minute in feudal, 10 in castle, and 15 in the Imperial Age might seem strong because your units are passively healing. It's not enough to really make any difference within a fight. What this promotes is taking a fight and then falling back home. So honestly, I think the technology suits some of the other defensive bonuses too, and the civilization is called a defensive cavalry civilization. So fighting and then falling back to just wait for the next attack with your good defenses is kind of how that bonus is supposed to be utilized. The unique unit for the Georgians is the Manaspa, which I tried to check the pronunciation on, and there's nothing I could find, so I think that's close. The Manaspa is a unique cavalry unit that becomes stronger when other Manaspas or Nightline units are nearby. The Manaspa doesn't really excite you when you first look at it. Just 75 HP for the Castle Age version and 90 HP when it's elite. The base attack's decent, 12 for standard, 14 for elite, and then the armor's kind of okay. But what I think makes this unit strong is it's super cheap, with 60 food and 45 gold being the cost. That is 30 less gold than a knight, but with 2 more attack, and also 1 more melee armor than a knight. I thought due to the lower HP, the Manaspa would be a bit squishier against archers. But they absolutely destroy archers like it's child play. So I think the thing that this unit will be most vulnerable against will be units with high bonus damage like Halberdier and Heavy Camel. This unit feels a bit more like a cheaper, slightly more armored version of a Latus for the Lithuanians. I played around with the attack bonus of the Manaspa and came to the following conclusion. It is +1 attack for every 5 Nightline or Manaspa units within a 14 tile radius, with up to a +4 attack. This is what brings me back to the latest comparison I made earlier. A player can get +4 attack on a cavalry unit by using them a certain way. But I'd prefer to have the Manaspa, which is much cheaper than a Latus, and it's just much easier to get more cavalry on the field than to get 4 relics on a map. I think the big issue with this unit balance-wise will simply come down to the cost. The attack's insane and the armor's insane. Coming in at 45 gold seems a little cheap to me. We'll see what the devs think long-term. Moving past the unique unit, we now go to the unique techs, of which there's some fun ones. The Castle Age tech is Svan Towers, where defensive buildings have +2 attack, and towers fire arrows that pierce multiple units. Now, I'm immediately really excited to do 10 times tech with this, because it's probably going to be ridiculous with towers. But yeah, this technology is going to add more defense to this civilization, which I think is notable when units and buildings already receive -15% damage when fighting from higher elevation. So you could spend 300 food, 200 gold, make a whole bunch of towers on hills, and it's harder for players to push up that hill with siege against it. The Imperial Age unique technology is Aznare Cavalry, where cavalry units take 15% less population space. This kind of reminds me of the Bengali civilization and the Mahayana tech, where villagers take up less population space. Obviously, very similar thinking, where you could have, say, 200 population with 100 population of that being cavalry. You research this technology, and then suddenly you get 15 pop space available to do whatever you want with. It's very heavy on food cost, being 750 food, but it's only 250 gold. Still 1,000 resources to research, though, so it's going to be something that you really have to think about researching. Now, the team bonus for this civilization is really unique. And the team bonus is buildings cost 50% fewer resources to repair. My mind immediately went to castles and a Trebor, where both players have trebuchets on either side, and both players have 5 to 10 villagers repairing. If it costs 50% fewer resources to repair, one player is probably going to end up winning that Trebor just due to the amount of stone they save. Now, the other thing I then thought of is town centers cost a lot of wood to repair if a town center is being attacked. So normally it's hard to defend from a siege push because you're repairing your town center and you don't have the wood to make your own siege. Here, it should be a bit easier to keep your town center up, to spend some wood on some counter siege. So it's another defensive bonus for this civilization that, of course, then applies to allies throughout a game. Still, though, it's a team bonus that you never really going to pick a civilization for. No one's going to be like, hey, Frank, can you pick the Georgians? Because we know you're going to get destroyed this game, and I always go into Castle Wars. I don't know. Maybe that's a real scenario, but it's just a niche team bonus that would help in some unique scenarios. I think 50% is a lot, though, and I definitely think that it would get to a point where players are going to have to take into account when they're taking certain types of fights, either against the Georgians or against Georgian teammates. All right, so those are the unique things with the Georgians. Again, I think the big thing is going to be the 10 tile radius with the fortified churches on top of the mule cart. I think there's some really funky builds that players are going to be able to do to potentially get a good economy. But let's talk about their normal tech tree, okay? Because they are lacking some things, and it's important to break it down. Okay, so out of their archery range, they only get crossbowmen, so real offensive archer play isn't necessarily for the Civ. They do get elite skirmisher. They do also get hand cannons and heavy cav archer. I think hand cannon is the biggest thing here because you don't usually need a lot of upgrades to make hand cannons very strong. So if you're ever up against lots of halbs, let's say, because you might be making a lot of knights, the hand cannons are there, which can help. Cav archers are probably something you want to skip because of the lack of thumb ring could be an issue, but live your dream if you want mobile units. Heavy cav archer and Parthian tactics still available in the range. They have everything available in the barracks, so that's quite nice. They can go all the way to champion and halb with gambesons and supplies being available. And then out of the stable, and I think this is pretty notable because they are a cavalry civilization, they get hussar and they get cavalier, so they do not get paladin. So earlier I compared the Georgians to the Lithuanians with their stable units. The Lithuanians always have the option of going paladin or Latus. Here it feels like you're definitely going to want to combine your unique unit with cavalier, or maybe if you have the castles up early, skip the cavalier in general if the unique unit is strong enough. It's weird though. I really think on paper you want to combine cavalier because of the HP, right? The tankiness, the 140 HP of a cavalier is going to be very nice combined with a unique unit, but I'm kind of getting ahead of myself. As for the siege, they're pretty solid there. They get siege ram, which could be helpful, and siege onager. However, lacking bomber cannon could be a little bit tricky. And from a balance perspective, I'm actually really happy they don't get bomber cannon because as we established, they're already probably going to win the Trev v Treb war with the fewer repair cost bonus. So at least someone against the Georgians could be making bombard cannons in order to take out the Georgian Trebs, making things a little bit more even in the Castle v Castle war. In the blacksmith, the only thing they lack is the final archer armor upgrade. Not that big a deal for the hand cannons I recommended going for. Is kind of a big deal for the cav archers. Full blacksmith upgrades elsewhere, though, is of course nice for the infantry and cav. And then on water, they've kind of got decent options here too, with fast fire ship being there and galleon, which of course doesn't need the archer armor, so it's still a fine option. Long term, though, no dry dock, no shipwright could become a problem. Even not even getting elite cannon galleon, so it's just not meant to really be a water civ. They get a lot of university technologies. Missing heated shot and missing bombard tower is kind of sad. But I mean, they go all the way to architecture, which I think is super notable for a civilization that already does so well with repairing. So yeah, if you want to educate yourself with the Civ, you've certainly got the option there. And then like we touched on earlier, obviously they've got the unique unit, the trebuchet, and all the standard stuff within the castle. And the monks are a little bit lackluster in the late game. That is basically the overview for the Georgians. I think the biggest thing here, and actually why I'm really excited for this civilization, is the way the eco works. That is what's fun about this game for me. Theory crafting and figuring out different ways to take resources. The Armenians and the Georgians having this mule cart will change how economy is looked at. And I'm sure there's going to be some really fun things to explore in terms of efficiency or even timings on where you take the mule cart and what resources you want to collect. Overall, I think this civilization is going to be quite strong on closed maps. So civilizations like Arena, where you could build the fortified churches to protect your eco, where having the time for your cavalry to regenerate after a fight, you could fall back behind your walls. All of those types of things, very strong on closed maps. You combine that with the ability to maybe win a Treb war in the event that both players are repairing. The crazy economy can be used for the Manaspa or some of the infantry, maybe in combination with it. I see a lot of Halb, Siege Ram, Manaspa, and efficient economies in the Georgian future. Do I think this civilization is going to dominate everything? Honestly, no. But I think it's going to be strong in some ways, and I'm looking forward to figuring it out. So that, my friends, is the end of my short little overview of the Georgians. Please let me know what your favorite part about this civilization is. Please give me your thoughts and opinions, as I'll be looking for them. There is one more civ from the Mountain Royals expansion that I will overview, and that is the Persians. I decided to save the Persians till last because the Persians are already in the game, and it is just a rework. but it is still a bit different than what Persians were in the past. And if anything, I'm more excited to talk about it because Persians have been around so long. So that'll hopefully be our next video. Please leave a like if you enjoyed the video. Looking forward to hear your thoughts, and I will see you all in the next one, guys.